Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Schmattz Outdoors. This is going to be part 3 of the Beaver series. This is going to be fleshing. I'm going to set up and show you how I flesh this beaver. And then the part 4 will be boarding it. Part 1 was skinning, part 2 was removing the caster. We'll quick show you what I'm going to use here. I have a Necker 600 fleshing knife. I just have a couple pails with a grocery bag to throw the fleshings in. My fleshing beam, I use the same one as I use for raccoons, so it's shaped kind of like a raccoon board. I made a wider version of this, but it didn't really, having it wider still didn't stop the pelt from sliding off the side of the beam. So I actually just basically use this one here for coyotes, raccoons, beaver. I use a small narrow one for muskrats and fox. Skunks, I've used this one and I've used the narrow one depending on how big the skunks are. But so we got that, we got this, we got my beaver right here. I do have my knife just in case I need it. All right guys, so here I got my beaver pelt here. We're gonna start on the head end and we're gonna weigh them fur down, so skin side up. Basically, I'm going to start right up by the head. The head part of it here, I don't need to worry about fleshing. This part of it, I don't need to worry about fleshing. Basically, from the ears back and the cheeks, I need to flesh. So I actually try to start kind of on the side of the beaver here. For the most part on this beaver, we're going to be using, for the middle part of the back, we're going to be using the sharp side of my Necker knife, and then the sides will be using the side of the beaver will be using the dull side of my knife here. Alright, so we're going to start, here's the eye. We're going to start about right next to the eye, and we're going to just start, and when I'm fleshing, cutting with the sharp side, I'm running at probably 30-degree angle from my beam. I'm not straight up and down or you're going to cut a hole in your pelt. And I'm not laying flat because it just won't slice like that. So I'm running at just a little angle, which is kind of tough for you to see there. And then when I'm slicing, I actually am kind of going down and slicing to the side at the same time. So I'm kind of making this, you know, kind of to the side. I always go down into my left. I'm a right-handed guy. I don't know. It just seems like that works best for me. It kind of is a pain because I can cut really good on this side of the face, but then on the other side, you're kind of cut in the wrong direction. I can't cut this way. It's unnatural for me. So, all right, we're going to get going here. We're going to start right here on the side. And I'm basically just trying to get a good start through the meat there. Get around that ear. So this is the ear right here. I want to stay away from that. Okay. And again, I'm just making, you know, like 2-inch slices. I'm not trying to make one huge long slice. I'm cutting like 2 inches at a time. So this is where the beaver was in the trap. And sometimes that can be real kind of thin or soft right there. And I got to be kind of careful not to cut a hole right there. And again, I just cut a little chunk of meat off. So I just throw that right in my pail. You got to always keep making sure that like it ain't building up on the edge of your knife or it won't actually cut. Okay, so I'm just turning my beaver around the board here a little, around my beam. All right. I always want to, for beaver, it seems like I always want to be cutting down the middle of my beam. It's the easiest to control where I'm cutting. So I always try to make sure I'm cutting down. As I cut, it naturally wants to push it off this side because I'm cutting at an angle like that. But and you see, I kind of got a bunch of it started, like a couple inches started, and then I take just a little bit of it down each time as I go. Okay. Pull the pelt around my board a little bit. Yeah. Get over here and try and get this set So I can try and do a little bit of the cheek on this side. And again, it's all just like I'm not putting even a ton of pressure down. I'm using some pressure obviously, but I'm not even putting really a lot of pressure down on my beam. It's more just kind of the pressure, kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I'm pushing down and forward, more forward really than I am down. I don't want to get too close to that leg because it'll kind of ball up there and you'll cut a hole around that leg. Okay, so I'm all the way down. This is probably 6 inches or a little more. Now I basically will pull it all the way up, and I will start, on a beaver this size, a 30-pound beaver, I'll leave like 8 inches on the edge. You could kind of tell where like soft fat starts instead of like this meaty stuff. I wonder if I can. Okay, so right there you could see I just purposely cut down this way a little bit. See how there's fat underneath that? I can push that off with the dull side. This more meaty stuff here won't push off, so you got to actually slice it. This part of it. So that's kind of how I know how far to go, is when I kind of run into that, you know, right here you could kind of see there's that fat line there or whatever. Then I know that I went far enough slicing. And I've seen guys, like, you see how there's this little bit of stuff left on there? I've seen guys get really carried away and like, well, you can see that. See this kind of stringy stuff? I've seen guys that will literally sit here and they'll keep cutting and cutting and cutting until they get that off. I leave that bait. I mean, I'm down to the hide essentially. I will pelt scrape it just a little once I put it on my board, and it'll take a little of that off if it's sticking up. Once it dries, you never see any of that. And I feel like the more I waste my time trying to cut it off, the more chance there is I'm going to cut a hole. So I don't get too carried away on every last little bit of gristle on a beaver, because I don't know, for some reason, like I said, once they dry, you can't see any of that. It all kind of mellows out. All right, you see kind of that stringy stuff? That is some of that stuff, and it kind of clogs up the edge of your blade. So I just keep making sure that my blade is right to the metal, so it's going to cut as efficiently as it can. So on this pass, I'm actually pushing a little bit farther down on the beaver, you know, cutting a little bit longer swipes. In the middle, there's nothing to really catch on the edges. You don't have to worry about the legs or nothing like that. So, okay, so we're gonna pull it back up here again. Start on this side again. You know, this is the back leg right here, so I want to kind of stay away from that again, because it's kind of like the front leg. There's like a, you know, little bit of extra skin around that leg. If you're not careful, it will kind of ball up on you. Okay, like right here, you can see there's not nearly the thickness of meat there as there is on towards the head. So you really got to be kind of careful with that, so you don't cut your pelt. But see, like right there, there's just hardly a membrane of skin there. It's a little tougher to get off than when the meat is real thick. Okay. Try to get them. Try to get this side cut down just a touch farther here. Okay. We're getting to the cartilage down around the rump here. So like I said, I left all this meat on there, but when I get down here to flesh this, whether there's a little meat or a lot of meat, it still cuts the same. You can see like that's soft fat. I can push that off with the dull side of my knife, so I don't need to. I don't need to use the sharp side of my knife to clean that up. Okay. Get me over towards the middle here. We're gonna cut a little bit of this. There we go. The stuff on that side was kind of pulling my whole pelt that way, so I just cut it with my fleshing knife, so I didn't have to be fighting the weight of all that right where I was trying to cut. So now I'm pushing with a little more force now down, just because the cartilage around the rump is a little bit harder to cut through. Okay. You see like this line right here, that was actually a line that I cut with my knife when I was skinning him. You know, there just isn't that much right over the rump there. So you got to be a little more careful when you are skinning over the top of that rump. Okay, now when I was skinning this, I made a point to show you guys that I basically try to cut right on the edge. So you can see like the very last half an inch of this is already skinned or fleshed. All the way across, there is a little bit right here, but basically all the way across, I tried to cut as close to the skin as I could when I was skinning it, because now when I get down here with my fleshing knife, it doesn't want to flesh off very good right there. Because there's no resistance pulling back against you right there. So you can kind of see, even though there was a little bit, there's still that little bit there, and you just can't flesh that off or cut it off very good. You know, and like I said, I already took quite a bit of that off when I was skinning. So like right here, I don't have to worry about any of that. It's all right to where it needs to be. Okay, just about done with the rump here. And I'm not pushing this way very hard, so I'm nicking my beam right there, but I'm just like skipping off of it. I'm not like gouging into it. You know, I'm not putting that much pressure down. All right. So now you guys could see I'm done with the whole middle of this beaver. All I have left is like the two sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn and get right above the back leg. So right here's the back leg. So there is some back here. We'll get to that later. So I'm going to turn to my dull side of my knife. So I've turned my pelt sideways. So now I'm pushing from the middle of the back towards the belly. Okay. Okay, so we had a couple bite marks right there that opened up, which a spring beaver doesn't surprise me. Around here, I don't get a lot of that in the fall because there's not huge numbers of beaver in my area that they don't hardly ever see another beaver. So I don't get like the tails don't. So I'm right over the top of this leg. So I'm basically just gonna kind of gently coax this a little on behind the leg, a little in front of that leg. And I'm just kind of gently coaxing it off of the leg. Okay, behind the leg. So I just basically fleshed right over the top of that leg. And that you can tell I was using more of a up and down knife to push, because it will slide over that. If I try to flesh like this, it'll want to catch on that leg. All right, now that I passed that leg, I'm just gonna push it off the side. Got a little bit right here. A little bit right towards the rump here. I was getting kind of towards the end of my reach, so I just pull it up a little bit. Okay. And now basically, just work myself towards the front leg. You know, when I keep, so I pushed it all the way to the edge of the pelt. I basically just work myself along the edge. Go back here towards the tail, or by the back leg. When my knife kind of plugs up with fat like that, I just make sure I keep getting that wiped off. It's a little tougher with the camera here. I can't see what I'm doing quite as good, but okay. So just move up here. All right, you got to be cautious when you get up here by the front leg. Right here's the front leg. There is a nipple right here. Right there it was, right here. So it just pulled out of right there. Yeah, you got to be a little cautious on any animal when you come to the nipple, but I have cut a couple holes right there, had the nipple pull out and it tore kind of a bigger hole, so I tried to slow down just a little right when I get to that, just to make sure that take my time so I don't cut a hole. Okay, now we're up to the front leg here. So I already fleshed like the side of his face here, but you still have to like cut. Some of this will come off, this part of it, but I still got to cut like all of this with kind of the sharp side of my knife. It just won't, and you got to be real careful right here by the leg, because you'll actually kind of pinch the leg and it'll tear a hole right there. So I'm using real light pressure. And you can see now I got down to more of this kind of blue hide. Now I don't have to worry. I'm already past anything I got to cut with the knife. Okay, I'm just pushing over the top of that leg. Okay, and I'm just working my way right towards that front lip. And there's half of a beaver's fleshing. Throw that in my pail. I typically ends up leaving just a little on the back side of my front leg, so I just pull that over the end of my beam and then get right around that. Okay, so there's that. We'll flip it to the other side of my pelt here. So we're going to start by the front leg here. Gotta get so I don't cut a hole in my front leg there. There we go. If I didn't quite get the cheek as good as I wanted going when I started, now is the time a guy can clean that up just a little, but looks pretty good. Again, we're gonna push right behind this front leg. There should be a nipple here somewhere. I'm gonna push right behind this front leg. There should be a nipple here somewhere. There it is right here. I'm just pushing right over the top of that leg. I'm gonna push right off. And I'm gonna just kind of work my way up towards this cheek. Like I said, normally part of that cheek rips off right there, which I don't get too concerned because you cut the whole front of the lips off when you're putting them on the board. Just gonna check my front leg here. Sometimes I even just will trim a little of that front leg off when I put them on the board, so I don't want to get too worried about making sure the very edge of it's completely cleaned off. And now it's just pushing. piece up there. I'm gonna have to go back because it's kind of off the edge of my board. Right here. There we go. If you leave just a little along the edge, I try to be pretty good about getting it clean, but if you do leave a little, when you're putting them on the board, you can always use a pellet scraper just to scrape a little off. Alright, so right here's my back leg again. So I want to try and push a little behind the leg and then a little in front of the leg. And that'll kind of help pull it. So behind the leg, kind of right over the top of the leg. Okay, looks pretty good. And we're on the home stretch here. Right down to the butt. And again, it's part of this to get trims off when you put it on the board. I think there's just a little bit right here. Just in front of this leg. Like I said, just getting the edge clean. Alright. Just grab them by the nose. Give it a good shake. And there is one beaver hide completely fleshed. Like I said, it looks like it's got a fairly fresh set of bite marks right there. Well, they're scabbed over, I guess, a little bit, but you won't even hardly notice those once the thing dries. Like this part of it will completely blend in once it dries. Alright, that's all there is for today. Nice beaver pelt, spring beaver. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Schmattz Outdoors. Leave a comment below if you guys see anything I could do different or have any comments or questions for me. Leave a comment below. I'll try to get back to you. Hit the subscribe button on this video so you know when part 4 of this video comes, or the series comes out. That'll be boarding. And then hit the little notification bell. That'll tell you instantly when it pops up. And again, I appreciate you guys watching Schmattz Outdoors. See you on the next one.